So Eddie McGuire has come up with the most ridiculous list of demands in order for a Tasmanian team to enter the AFL, but not until 2028. So he wants them to wait at least another 7 years. And then if they can meet all these criteria, then and only then should they be allowed into the AFL. All right, let's have a look at what Eddie has to say.
An AFL state. Premier, you need to decide where your ground will be. That's your call. But it needs a roof. Simple as that. One influential Tasmanian who knows a bit about the caper said to me, quote, Macquarie Point in Hobart.
There you go. Right, so the taxpayer must build a brand new stadium. And what's more is this stadium must have a roof. It must have a roof. Now, I find this completely unbelievable. Currently, there's only one AFL stadium with a roof. And in fact, there has not been a stadium built in Australia for football, rugby league, rugby union, soccer or AFL built since 1999 with a roof. Every single new stadium built in this country since 1999 has been built without a roof. But for a Tasmanian AFL team, it must have a roof. It must be a brand new stadium. We can't use the two stadiums that are currently used in Tasmania for AFL. So we've got two stadiums in Tasmania right now that have currently got AFL approval for AFL games. And they have both had hundreds of millions of dollars spent on them, but they're no longer good enough. Mind you, these stadiums are, Bellerive Oval is used for international cricket and has been the home of Test match cricket for decades. But for the new Tasmanian team, in order for Tasmania to have an AFL team, there must be a new stadium and there must be a roof. Even though there is only one AFL stadium with a roof and no NRL stadiums with roofs in Australia, not one NRL stadium has a roof. The Melbourne Storm could play at Marvel Stadium, which has a roof, but the Melbourne Storm choose to play at Amy Park, which doesn't have a roof. So clearly the Melbourne Storm don't think that having a roof is that important. Cricket Australia don't think it's important either, as they have never had a test match. Marvel Stadium has now been open for 21 years and there has never been a single test match at Marvel Stadium / Dockland Stadium. So he wants to abandon the two stadiums and build a brand new one with a roof. What a ridiculous waste of taxpayers' money that would be. But Maguire is used to having the taxpayer build stadiums, and all of Collingwood's training facilities have been built with taxpayers' money, so of course that would be Eddie Maguire's expectation. The second thing that I find extraordinary is he wants the Tasmanian state government to spend $20 million a year on this Tasmanian team forever. $20 million a year, the Tasmanian taxpayer has got to donate to this AFL team. He also wants the federal government to give them another $20 million. Why should the taxpayer pay for AFL teams so they can pay AFL footballers up to $1 million a year to play football? It does not make any sense. It makes no sense at all. The third thing that Tasmania must do in order to qualify for an AFL team is they must produce more players. Eddie McGuire is very adamant they are not producing enough players, and in order to qualify and meet Eddie's demands, they must produce more. Now, he's cherry-picked a point the last 6 years where Tasmania has not produced that many AFL footballers. In that time, they've produced many really good cricketers. Let's have a look actually at, this is the Tasmanian AFL Team of the Century. Just have a look at some of the names in that team. Tasmania has produced plenty of high-quality AFL footballers and really have nothing to show for it as they have no teams. All they get at the moment is Hawthorn's smallest games and North Melbourne's smallest games. And the reality is that most people in Hobart do not support North Melbourne. Most people do not support or even like North Melbourne. So why would they want to go and watch their 3 or 4 smallest games of the year? So there we can see that's Tasmania's team of the century. Eddie may not be aware, but Tasmania actually bet Victoria. They actually bet Victoria in AFL State of Origin. So don't worry, Tasmania has produced many a fine footballer. They do not have to prove anything and produce more footballers just so they could meet some magical criteria. They've also, have a look at some of the cricketers they've produced. Now, they've won the Sheffield Shield. They've won the state one-day competition many a times. The Hobart Hurricanes get huge crowds. They often will sell out Belrive Oval. Two of the last 5 Australian cricket captains have been Tasmanians and Tasmanian born as well. So they produced many a cricketer. The other thing I find interesting about what Eddie wants is he wants to reduce the season to just 20 games. So he wants to go from 22 games to 20 games. And he wants to do something interesting. He talks about the extra revenue this would create because it would mean you'd have more finals. But the thing that Eddie doesn't understand is if you only have 20 rounds and everybody plays everybody once, that means that Port Adelaide only play the LA Crows once. So you only have one showdown a year, not 2. The West Coast Eagles only play the Fremantle Dockers once. So you only have 1 derby, not 2. Collingwood only play Carlton once, not twice. Essendon only play Carlton once, not twice. This would reduce revenue drastically because you would have far less blockbusters over the course of a year and you would have 2 less games. Now, I find this reducing of games interesting. We have already reduced the season. We used to have a pre-season that was a competition of 4 matches plus you would have a practice match before the pre-season, before the Ansett Cup or the Wizard Cup. You would have 1 practice match, then you would have 4 pre-season games. So you used to have 5 pre-season games. Now you have 2. So we've effectively lost 3 games a season. Plus, the other thing that I find interesting is the quarters are actually shorter now than what they used to be. Until 1994, the quarters were 25 minutes plus time on. Today, they're 20 minutes plus time on. As you can see here, this is from round 1 in 1993. This is after the first goal's been kicked, and they're counting down. So we've lost it. So think about this. The quarters are 5 minutes shorter. We're playing 3 less pre-season matches. We're not playing AFL State of Origin. And Eddie wants to reduce the season even further. Take into consideration too that players in those days, many of them had jobs. So they were working jobs, now they're not working jobs, and they were playing longer quarters and more games. But Eddie, for some reason, wants to reduce things even further. Then comes the wokeness. Eddie wants another team in Darwin because he wants to increase Aboriginal and Aboriginal/Indigenous participation in the AFL. Eddie hasn't learned his lesson. Now, Eddie's been pretty much kicked out of the Collingwood presidency because woke people forced him out because they said he was a racist. So what Eddie is trying to do here is he's trying to prove them wrong and say, no, I'm not racist. I want to help Aboriginals, help them get into the AFL. Now, this article is coming from the ABC. Indigenous Australians make up 2.8% of the population. But of all AFL players, they make up 11%. 2.8% of the population, 11% of the AFL footballers. And Eddie McGuire reckons we should have a 20th team in Darwin, specifically so we can have more Indigenous players playing in the AFL. Eddie, being woke, you're only going to annoy people. You're not going to win over the woke people who want you gone. They want you. They've already gotten you out of the Collingwood presidency. They want you away from your media commitments as well. This isn't going to help your cause. You've done all sorts of woke things over the years, and none of them have worked. They still got rid of you. But yeah, for me, this is the most ridiculous couple of minutes of television ever. Tasmania deserve their own team. They have done for decades. They've produced enough footballers. They have 2 state-of-the-art stadiums that have had hundreds of millions of dollars spent on them. Cricket Australia say they're good enough for international test cricket. The AFL right now are saying they're good enough for AFL football in 2021. They're good enough for the A-League. They're good enough for a Tasmanian team. The Australian taxpayer should not be paying for this team. This team can produce enough revenue, as the Hobart Hurricanes do, to stay afloat. They don't need taxpayers' money. They don't need taxpayers to build stadiums. They don't need to meet any of these criteria. They should be in the AFL next year. Let me know what you think in the